What if everything you thought you knew about love and relationships was actually just the tip of the iceberg? For years, we've been stuck thinking that there are only two options. You're either committed to a serious long-term relationship or you're just a player. Like that there are only two teams that you can join. A new study I read has the potential to completely transform how we think about relationships, and it could open your eyes to a deeper understanding of open relationships, polyamory, and all those non-monogamous relationship styles you've been hearing about. If we haven't met before, I'm Oliver. I'm a relationship therapist here in Los Angeles, and I love helping people grow great relationships. I am here to break down this new perspective on relationships because it truly changes everything, even for me as a therapist. So as we explore this new way of thinking about relationships, I'm going to break down all of the different terms and terminology you've heard about in this area to give you more of a complete understanding of relationships in 2024. And don't worry about remembering all of the terms. There's a nifty infographic with all of the terms on it that I'll put on my website, and the link to that will be in the notes below. So if you're curious about how someone can love deeply, be happily married, and still crave new experiences with other people, stick with me because I'm going to unravel that and a whole lot more. I think what you'll discover is that these people aren't confused or indecisive. It's just our way of thinking about human desires has just been limited. And frankly, humans are just more complex and layered than simply being on one team or another. So this fascinating new research study published in Personality and Individual Differences has really helped me understand relationships in quite an exciting way. Traditionally, we've been told there's a spectrum. On one end, there's those who want casual encounters, and on the other end of the spectrum, it's commitment or monogamy, and you have to choose. But what if that's not the whole story? I told you we were going to break down all of the terms and terminology, so let's get clear on what monogamy means. Monogamy refers to a relationship structure in which an individual has only one romantic or sexual partner at a time. So I put that solid boundary around the relationship to indicate that it's closed to others. So on one end, we've got monogamy. On the other end, there's sort of casual, short-term encounters, thrill and excitement. It was like being on a seesaw, where being high on one end meant being low on the other. But this new study reveals that these desires for casual and committed relationships don't sit on opposite ends of the same spectrum. Instead, they coexist as separate and independent dimensions that overlap. And this helps us explain romantic desires and different styles of relationships in really new and really fascinating ways. So according to the data in this report, we now have one scale that measures your desire for casual encounters and another scale that measures your desire for long-term commitment. You can be high or low in both. When you map these out, you can see that people's desires are just much more complex than being monogamous or not. Because as you're aware, there are many other options besides monogamy, which we call consensual non-monogamy. Definition time. Non-monogamy is just an umbrella term that encompasses any relationship structure that falls outside the traditional one-partner model of monogamy. Consensual non-monogamy is an umbrella term for relationships in which all partners give explicit consent to engage in romantic, intimate, and sexual relationships with other people. Cheating or infidelity is when there is a lack of this consent or agreement. Side note, this used to be called ethical non-monogamy, but we're going with consensual non-monogamy because the word ethical has a bit of mononormative judgment in it. Oh, another definition. Mononormativity refers to the dominant societal assumption or belief that monogamy is the default, normal, or superior relationship model. Let's get back to the map. This gives rise to 4 broad relationship archetypes, each with its own sort of unique characteristics and challenges. Because each axis is a spectrum, you can have variations within the categories to give even more options and probably more labels and names that we have to learn and understand too. So the study found that people with strong pair bonding motivations, so if 2 people are in the same category, they tend to be more satisfied in their relationships. No surprise there. And those with strong motivations for casual interactions might struggle with long-term commitment and satisfaction in long-term relationships, obviously. But now we have 4 different types of people that we can look at. The anchor is deeply invested in creating and maintaining stable, emotionally secure relationships. You might characterize their relationships as being a bit routine and predictable, which they find comforting rather than boring. They're going to be very supportive, reliable, often being the emotional rock in a relationship. In a purist form, I can imagine this sort of person resisting change or avoiding new experiences, leading potentially to some stagnation in the relationship, and they might struggle with introducing novelty or spontaneity, which could lead to some boredom with their partner, especially if their partner has more of a desire to explore things and be a bit more adventurous. But remember, on the whole, the research showed us that people in the same category tend to be more satisfied in their relationships. The yacht is someone with a high desire for commitment and a high interest in casual relationships too. The yacht kind of wants it all. They want to go and explore on adventures, and at the same time, they might want to take their partner with them, or at least enjoy the comforts of a long-term relationship at the same time. So this is a luxury yacht with a jacuzzi and a chef and a DJ. These are the sort of partners that might want to open up a relationship or be in a polyamorous relationship to satisfy both of these desires. If we were looking at people through the traditional lens of either monogamy or casual fun, these are probably the most confusing of people because until now, we couldn't really explain their desires or seemingly conflicted interests. But now it makes much more sense. So the partner of a yacht who suddenly finds out of their interest in exploration of non-monogamous relationships might be very confused. It could lead to a lot of mistrust, relationship breakdowns, and anger and resentment. It might also be really confusing to a yacht type of person who doesn't know this framework. If they don't know that these two spectrums coexist at the same time, they might have a lot of internal conflict, which will manifest as relationship tension or depression or even substance use. The seeker is just not that interested in long-term committed monogamous relationships. They enjoy and like not being tied down to one person. They're likely to be more adventurous, free-spirited. Some of them will constantly seek out new experiences and connections, while others just don't want to get serious with anyone. It might sound lonely to some people, and perhaps even to the seeker who doesn't fully understand their desires and priorities because they don't quite know that this framework exists and it's very human. If this person thinks that they should be in a relationship or feels some mononormative pressure from friends or family to be in a long-term relationship, then this is going to cause them some emotional discomfort. They're going to be wondering what's wrong with them until they accept that their drive or desire for monogamy or commitment is just not as high as other people's. The island values independence and self-reliance. They have minimal interest in romantic or casual relationships, preferring to focus on personal goals like career or creative pursuits. They might be content with solitude, but also might have difficulty relating to others who prioritize relationships. And again, they might find themselves having to resist that mononormative pressure to conform to be in a relationship because that's what society thinks and says is normal. So let's walk through how different relationship styles align with our 4 different archetypes. So again, this research is brand new. So these are just my guesses about how the different relationship styles align with these 4 archetypes potentially, and future studies might prove me very wrong. We've already said that anchors value deep emotional connections and stability. They're the most comfortable with monogamy. They want to commit fully to one partner, both emotionally and sexually, and this commitment to one person is where they find their sense of security and fulfillment. Yachts are those who enjoy the stability of a committed relationship, but also crave variety and new experiences. They might be more interested in being monogamish. Now, monogamish is a term coined by sex advice columnist Dan Savage that describes relationships that are mostly monogamous, but allow for some degree of sexual contact with other people. So I changed the boundary around this image to reflect the idea that this relationship is not quite as closed as the monogamous one. Swinging relationships? Swinging is when couples engage in sexual activities with other couples or individuals. It's focused more on sexual connection rather than emotional connections. But depending on the agreement and the couple, I changed the boundary again to be a little more open. Yachts might also be drawn to open relationships. In open marriages or open relationships, partners in a primary relationship have sexual or romantic relationships outside their partners, but they often have limits to the amount of emotional connection made. So the boundary in this image is more porous, reflecting the idea that other people can come into the relationships at times and it's not fully protected like a monogamous relationship. Seekers might also be driven by that thrill of new connections and have lower interest in monogamy. So really, they could be open to anything. they're most likely to be drawn to polyamory. Polyamory refers to the practice or desire for engaging in multiple intimate relationships simultaneously with the informed consent of everyone involved. So this is an example of polyamory, but so is this, and this, and so is that. There's lots of different types of polyamory. A polecule is to polyamory as couples is to monogamy. So it's just the way you refer to a network of group of people that are connected through their intimate relationships. Unlike monogamish or open relationships, polyamory places less emphasis on maintaining a sort of primary bond and does allow for deeper emotional connections with more than one person. And the island probably values independence more and might avoid both emotional and physical commitments. So they might be interested in solo polyamory, which is where an individual maintains multiple relationships without prioritizing anyone. So far, we've looked at individuals and their potential relationship style matches, but there's a much better way to understand the different types of consensual non-monogamous relationship dynamics through a different matrix. This was not part of the study I've been talking about so far, but I wanted to round up this video by talking about more of the different types of relationships and what they are. And this comes from the book Polysecure by Jessica Fern, which I highly recommend. I will put the link below. So the matrix in this book breaks it all down by looking at two key dimensions: emotional exclusivity and sexual exclusivity. That's who you love and who you hold hands with. I've been skirting around saying the word sex because I'm not sure if YouTube will let me say it. In real life, I'm not this much of a prude, I promise. Sexual exclusivity refers to the limits of sexual activity that partners have in a relationship, with high exclusivity, meaning one person only at the top, and low exclusivity at the bottom. Emotional exclusivity gauges the degree to which emotional connections are confined to one partner, with high exclusivity at one end and low exclusivity on the other. Now, some people are okay with their partner getting physically intimate with another person, but will not tolerate it if they were to get emotionally close to someone else. So it's important to know that these two scales exist. So the top quadrant here is all about exclusivity, both in emotions and sex. Monogamy and monogamish exist here, as does polyfidelity. Polyfidelity is a form of polyamory where three or more people agree to be in an exclusive relationship with each other all at the same time. But those individuals remain really exclusive within their polecule. So this could be a triad, a quad, or a larger group where all members are committed to each other and do not engage with others outside of the group. A triad is a polyamorous relationship involving three people, all of whom are romantically and or sexually involved with each other. A V is a polyamorous relationship structure where one person is involved with two other peoples who are not necessarily romantically or sexually involved with each other. A quad is very similar to a triad, but involves four people in a polyamorous relationship. Parallel polyamory is a form of polyamory where partners are aware of each other's existence, but choose not to interact with each other. And a metamor is the way that you refer to the partner of your partner with whom you do not share any direct romantic or sexual relationships. The next quadrant features relationships that are emotionally exclusive, but allow for sexual relationships with others. So this is an open relationship or an open marriage where partners are committed to each other as their primary relationship, but allow for sexual activities or encounters outside that partnership. Swinging is also here. That's when couples engage in sexual activities with others, but typically within the same event or setting while maintaining that emotional exclusivity with each other. The primary relationship remains emotionally exclusive, with sexual openness being agreed upon. This bottom, the lower corner, is low sexual exclusivity and low emotional exclusivity. Relationships in this quadrant are open both sexually and emotionally, allowing partners to form multiple significant connections simultaneously. This is where you're going to see hierarchical polyamory and non-hierarchical polyamory, and you're going to see solo polyamory too. Hierarchical polyamory is a polyamorous structure with a ranking system among the relationships. So they'll use terms like primary, secondary, and tertiary relationships. Whereas a non-hierarchical polyamorous relationship is where multiple simultaneous relationships occur without any of the imposed hierarchies or ranking systems in place. So in the quadrant where there's high sexual exclusivity and low emotional exclusivity, this quadrant includes relationships where partners are highly sexually exclusive with each other, but there's an agreement that partners can become emotionally close to other people, maybe even romantic, but it doesn't cross the line into sex. So people who identify as asexual or aces might put themselves into this box as they typically experience little to no sexual attraction to others. But asexuality varies from person to relationship, so some aces might not agree with this, but others might. So we'll put a little question mark next to that. Don't mean to offend anyone. Poly-intimates are also in this section. This is where partners might be sexually exclusive to one partner, but have agreed in their relationship that they want to form deep, emotionally satisfying, intimate relationships with other people. A traditional monogamous relationship would call that an emotional affair or emotional cheating. But in this type of agreement, the relationships have got the thumbs up from their partner. So it might include living together, raising kids together, other significant life events. It's a relationship that goes beyond just friendship. And relationship anarchists are all the way at the bottom, or perhaps not even on the chart. That's because they reject traditional relationship hierarchies and norms, treating all relationships as unique without predefined expectations. They don't prioritize romantic or sexual relationships over friendships. They just allow each connection to develop naturally. They're the ultimate in free spirits. I hope that's given you a bit of an overview of all the different types of CNM relationships there are, and I really hope it's helped you see how it all works and fits together. Now, don't forget, you can get the infographics from all of this on my website. The link will be below. And of course, I would love it if you hit share or follow or like if you found this useful or helpful and want to hear more about growing great relationships.